What's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker. This is WPwatercooler, episode number 132.
We have some stuff to talk about today.
Oh, yeah. Today we're talking about running a large-scale website on something called WordPress. Let's go around the room here real quick and get everyone introduced. Let's start with Chris. Chris.
Hi there. My name's Chris Lemma. I am the CTO of a crowd favorite, a WordPress agency that works with large sites and large companies. And I run the North County San Diego WordPress meetup.
Somewhere.
He's expanding. He's doing the North Bay now. What about you, Dave?
I'm Dave. I'm CTO at Spectrum Tech, and we build custom plugins and e-commerce solutions.
Very nice. What about you, Say?
Hi, my name's Say Reed, and I teach WordPress, make WordPress, live, love, live, breathe WordPress. At Say Reed Media on all the things. Happy 420. What?
What about you, Steve?
I'm Steve Zingen. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
Very nice. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me, Jason Tucker, and I blog over at WPmedia.pro and jasontucker.us. That's about it. We have a very small panel today.
Small panel, large scale.
Large scale. Yep. We're going big.
Before we get into the topic, we should just note that Securi, who is a security company focused across the web, but including particularly WordPress, found some issues with the way in which the WordPress codex had articulated the use of certain functions. I know that's a lot of gobbledygook, but what it means is
update your plugins.
That many of the top plugins have a vulnerability, and so they have all worked over the last week to create new versions. So whether you're talking about related posts, or you're talking about P3 Profiler, or you're talking about iThemes, or WP e-commerce, or Gravity Forms, especially if you're talking about Jetpack and WordPress SEO from Yoast, you're going to want to update all your plugins. That's a big, big deal.
Literally all of them, because what is right? That's like all of the major players.
It is.
Except
anybody who's anybody.
There's no woo. Woo! We're wooless. The list is wooless.
During our pre-show, we were talking a little bit about it because of the fact that we think that there's, we haven't looked into the code yet or anything, but we have a sneaky suspicion that there's a lot of kind of reusable code that people have been using, and they've all used the same type of technique. So we're thinking that's most likely where this is coming from. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Yep.
Jason got a haircut.
I did. It happens.
Oh, cute. Now you have lower ears.
Yep, lower ears.
What's amazing?
Anyway,
Jason is trying to get to the point where all his facial and head hair are all the same length.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Isn't it?
It's getting very close. Soon we're going to call Jason a chia pet. But until then,
Chia.
Yeah. Until then, we're talking about running large sites off of WordPress. And the question is, I guess, maybe one of the first questions is, given some of these vulnerabilities, does it make any sense to run large sites on WordPress, or should people move off to some other platform? Thoughts?
this is actually something that Matt Mullenweg recently talked about. He did a blog post, I don't know if any of you saw it, on whether or not you should run a bank WordPress on web.
It's easy for you to say on WordPress.
A bank website on WordPress. I'm doing well with this. And his thoughts on that. He posted about that. Post status. Reposted it.
I don't see any problem with it.
Well, okay, his post was about running the front end off of WordPress and, you know, dealing with the content and all that stuff as one should with WordPress, and then, you know, possibly not using it for the back end or just keep everything updated. Really was his advice.
At its core, WordPress is PHP MySQL. So is the question, should you be running a large-scale website on PHP MySQL? Yes.
Yeah, why not?
I asked and answered my own question.
Yes, you should be running big, large-scale websites on PHP and MySQL. Wow.
But in some ways, WordPress makes it easier because it's very easy to upgrade the plugins when there is a vulnerability found. It's just pushing a button. Like today, you should update everything today. But another thing is there are a lot more people looking at WordPress code than there are people looking at Laravel code or CodeIgniter code. So if you're building a platform on CodeIgniter, you're probably the only one who's looking at that code. Your team is the only one looking at the code base.
No one else is there.
So
Probably
Dave,
not.
you bring up an interesting point because that's both good and bad.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it's a double-edged sword. More
That's
people
one of
looking
the-
at it means more vulnerabilities can be found, but it also means more people are working towards fixing those same vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
And more people are, trying to, when something like today happens, when you can, now that it's announced, if people don't get that information, that they need to update their plugins, then, hackers, whatnot, do get that information, they can use that window to exploit it.
But
Yeah.
because there's more people working in the code, like Dave said, that means if you're working on a large-scale site and you need to scale your team, there are generally more resources available for WordPress.
Yeah.
So
There's a larger pool of WordPress developers.
and there's also a larger pool of dogs at Say's house.
There is a dog.
My dog
The show
agrees
is
with
sponsored
you.
dogs.
Well, I think that general rule of thumb is the one we've used for pretty much every major decision that I've been a part of over the last 20 years for building enterprise software is how do you build and what stack do you build is not a function of the latest and the coolest technologies, but more a function of how many resources are available, right? When you're looking to hire, you don't want to build on a stack that only has 12 people on the planet that know it. You want to build with a stack that a lot of people are available, that if you need to grow the team, you can. And at the end of the day, if you're in a situation where you need someone to review the code, even if it's just review, that you can do that, right? And so WordPress makes a lot of sense in that scenario, right? We just rolled out a website that is for ABC on the news media side, and it's huge. But it's all WordPress on the front end because WordPress makes some things really easy, right? It makes all that content management, all the rights and responsibilities of who gets to see and edit what, makes all of that, right, very, very easy.
Caching is an important part of any large enterprise site.
Yep, and then totally caching, right? Whether you're talking about one or two or three different technologies that you can use to support caching. All of it is available and well articulated by folks in the WordPress community.
Is HyperDB still a thing?
HyperDB.
Still around.
I remember that. Oh wow, that's
still a
like
thing?
some
Is it
weird
still
old
necessary?
memory just jogged.
Am I dating myself?
I don't know.
You are. So do people still use Scantrons? I'm sorry. Are we just randomly?
You know what's bad
Weirdly
is they
asking
do.
Did we get to the random question part of the show?
We're talking about large scale. That used to be a thing.
I remember HyperDB. OMG, HyperDB. Didn't understand it then. Don't understand it now. Good times. I think. Well, the other thing that what you're talking about with large-scale companies is that there's often turnover, right? You have more people, you're hiring more people, you're growing, and using something like WordPress, especially on the front end. Maybe you don't use it for your back-end secret office type people who are doing compliance and whatever, but on the front end, it's way easier to train somebody. People are now coming in with WordPress on their resume, so like WordPress familiarity is like a skill set. So that makes just training and average employee involvement with the website possible in a way that kind of non-WordPress sites don't make it possible.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that across the board with all of my clients, and that's been a shift over the past couple of years. Is used to be when we were talking about a WordPress site, we had to go in and we really had to train people, but people at the corporations that we're working with have somebody on staff that knows WordPress. They're running a personal blog. They have WordPress experience from a past job. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Say.
Yeah, the literacy is really, really notched up, which is super exciting. It's exciting when clients come in
Just
and
general literacy or WordPress literacy.
WordPress literacy. Sorry,
Because I read good.
I read good stuff. No, WordPress
Nice.
literacy. I have clients who come in and even like you're saying, a couple years ago, they'd be like, "What's this WordPress thing you're talking about?" And now they're like, "Yeah, I've heard of that," or "Yeah, I started a WordPress.com blog a couple years ago that I
or now they're even
twice on."
requesting a WordPress site instead of saying, "What is that?"
Yes.
Well, most people, yeah, are requesting that. I like it when it makes all the like web developers who don't do WordPress mad. That makes me funny. I think that's funny. It makes me laugh.
So one of the things that I was thinking about when we talk about this topic is, what are some of the biggest sites out on the internet that are run on WordPress?
Oh.
With all the WordPress VIP stuff, right?
I'm just thinking
And everything from Ground Favorite.
like TechCrunch, right?
Right.
Mashable is Mashable a WordPress site?
I know they
The whole site? Well, in Matt's post, he says that WordPress VIP is running Facebook. I don't know about that.
I think
they mean it's like internal blog or something.
I think it's Facebook's blog.
Yeah, and then eBay's blog, and
Quartz,
Mozilla, MIT, Reuters.
If you've ever read Quartz, which is a media and publishing site,
Yeah.
they're running on WordPress. Many of the Microsoft blogs, we saw that over the last year. Web Dev Studios rolled out a whole bunch of Microsoft blogs that are running on it. I think a lot of the different, I mean, we know like D23, which is the largest fan site, a huge membership site, millions of people for Disney is running. I know because CrowdFavorite did it, but they're running on WordPress. TED, I think the ideas.ted.com was 10up. I think 10up worked on TED, if I'm right. So there's a lot of different big sites that are.
So I just Matt in his post said that NASA is running on WordPress, and I'm sure he means blogs at some point. So I just went to nasa.gov with the, what WP theme is that, and it says NASA.gov appears to be running Drupal.
Yeah, it's one of NASA's blogs.
I'm looking right now at the WordPress.org showcase, and some of the featured sites they have are TechCrunch, Facebook Newsroom. Alanis Morissette runs on WordPress. So. And Garth Brooks. So
there's another very large scale WordPress
he has
site.
friends in low places.
Isn't that ironic?
There's another very large scale WordPress site,
think?
and that's WordPress.com.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are thousands of sites being hosted there.
Yep.
I heard a rumor at one point that there was some elements of that weren't WordPress, but I don't know. That would be really weird, right?
Yeah, because they do what Sade doesn't. They use images, so the media library. They hit upload and use the media library, so it's not all WordPress. Some of it is images, but it still looks pretty good.
So some of the other
It works for them.
Some of the other ones I'm seeing on here, besides TechCrunch, there's ESPN has some stuff on WordPress. Quartz, you mentioned, Chris.
But we're talking about, in those cases, you're talking about the blog of that site, like eBay's site. eBay's blog
still
is
a high traffic site.
Of course.
Recode is a media property, and so it is a publishing site, the site itself. But I know Range worked on that, I think, and it's a ton of traffic that is all publishing based, right? So you do see a lot of publishing oriented sites that are using it because it's so easy to manage content, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But they're not running. eBay's engine, eBay, the auction site, the buy it now thing, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not running on WordPress. No. That's its own thing. But I think it's a bit misleading sometimes. Like even in Matt's post where he's like, Facebook. He doesn't specify that it's the blog. He doesn't specify that it's this one property of this ginormous media presence. So I find that a bit misleading, but. It's not to say that those aren't super high traffic sites, and they're obviously vulnerable to hacks, and they just have just as much weight as anything else. But it's not the same thing as running eBay.
It's true. It's true.
Facebook.
The Mavs.com was one of the first NBA teams to leave the consolidated NBA infrastructure for the web and actually spin out their own. And Brandon and Jeff at Pixel Jar worked on that. Cody Landefeld built the Phoenix Suns blog. Again, not the ticketing part, but the blog part.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some of these sites, like I remember specifically because we collaborated with PixelJar when we were working through some hosting issues. But the traffic requirements of some of these sites are massive. I mean, you can imagine when an NBA team goes to playoffs, like the Lakers have done
like
over and over and over again.
Right,
so much so that we're now
like the Clippers, you mean?
Yeah, but I'm just talking about having
I'm talking about the teams that didn't opt out of the playoffs.
I'm just talking about the longevity.
Clippers on WordPress.
Right. Go ahead.
The longevity of it.
Go ahead with your point. Yeah.
What's your point? You have 2 points.
It's just the kind of traffic that these sites get is ridiculous.
So one of the sites that I built and we maintain is dailycaller.com. It's a large news site, and that's got major traffic. And so there's a large scale example. In addition to I can't in public. In addition,
you can say millions of views because it's definitely millions of views.
In addition to Alanis Morissette, they also have rickasley.com on WordPress.
Oh my God.
That's actually not true. I just rickrolled all of you.
You did a non-rickroll. Rickroll? What is that? Like
it's it's kind of a rickroll.
It's a rick rock. Anyway,
yes.
So he also Matt also talks about this bank that is running on WordPress, Gateway Bank of Arizona. But again, I don't know what part of the bank is running on that. Is it their online banking accounts?
So all of the front end, all the front-facing, client-facing stuff is all running WordPress. I know because 40, one of our subsidiaries at CrowdFavorite, built it. But all the front-end stuff is. But when you tap into accounts, that's not right.
They're using Jetpack's login for it.
So when you go to manage your account, you're no longer in WordPress, and that's a good thing.
Just out of curiosity, do you know what that stack is built on? The account stack?
I don't remember specifically, but we've worked on some fairly large, and not even just CrowdFavorite, but other agencies I know have worked on very large sites for financing. For example, the whole series of automobile websites where you're going to the manufacturer to look at the car, but then you want to connect to their financing organization, Ford Finance, Honda Finance, etc. A lot of those sites are built using WordPress, but when you actually click the "Let me apply for financing," you're in a .NET application, right? WordPress has passed you on to something else. And
I think that's awesome, though, that integration. Like, if you weren't aware of that, if you didn't have any development, it would be seamless. You know, you'd just be like, I'm on this site, I can't tell the difference. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. It can integrate so well, and you can transfer over from a place where it's, marketing and content and back into the actual functionality and admin, and those can interact in a seamless manner.
So one of the big sites that runs on WordPress is Beyonce.com. I know because they're hosted over at Media Temple, right? And they have.
What's Beyonce.com?
What is it?
It's a website.
Who is Beyonce, or what is the site?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know who Beyonce is?
Oh, Bayonese. I know who Bayonese is. I always say that wrong.
Go on, Chris.
Please go on.
Wow. And one of the things you note is when you finally get to Beyonce's store, right?
Which you go to often.
You get
After all these animated GIFs, geez, man.
You get routed to a subdomain, right? And so you'll see that happen a lot. Is that people have put 2/3 or 3/4 of the site on WordPress, and then when they want to go do some transactional work, they may move off to a subdomain, keep some of the styling, but then direct the traffic to something different, right? And so.
Wait, Beyonce's shopping cart is not running on WooCommerce, is what you're telling me?
I don't think it is. No.
So let's consider that question for a minute, because this is part of it, right? You build your site and you're integrating it, and maybe it's not as large scale as that, but you're taking your WooCommerce or a plugin to a large scale level. Does the game change then?
She's using global merchant services.
But okay, so she's using a separate thing other than the WordPress. So she's using WordPress for what WordPress does best, which is content management. So if you snap on something like, WooCommerce to manage your e-commerce aspects of your site, is the scalability, being limited at that point? Like how big can WooCommerce get without really starting to be a problem?
So any
That's a
system,
loaded question.
any system,
I know, that's why I asked it.
You just opened it.
any system built on top of WordPress as an application that has not created its own tables but is using the post and post meta tables as a way to structure it, even with custom post types, is going to, if they leave it by default, is going to have in the long run some work to do to scale, right? Because post meta isn't indexed the same way. The entire system was designed to do something slightly different, and so you're going to discover that how it gets crafted and managed is going to have its own dynamic. That said, can you go in and make adjustments to how the data is stored? Can you go in and make adjustments to what you do to essentially create a layer of data that you can hit and connect to through APIs and other things to scale something? You totally can do that. So it's not impossible, but that's where you don't. That's not a do-it-yourself project, right? And I think Dave would agree, right? When we get called in, it's because someone's saying, I want to take this and I want to scale it huge, and you go, okay, but then we're going to have to make some adjustments to how we're doing things.
Yeah,
we're going to need to take you off of
you can use
a
few thousand products in a WooCommerce site without too much effort. If you start going beyond that, 10, 20, up to 50, I've seen sites with 50,000 products in WooCommerce, and it does work, but you have to do a lot of work to get there.
How do you even manage that, though? Like,
well, and that's
product management. Like, that's
where you see some of the issues scale, right? Because it's not so much on the outside. It's not so much the customer, because the customer is like clicking on a page, looking at some content, clicking on an item, looking at some content. WordPress does all that great.
And you can use caching to help with a lot of that.
You can use a ton of caching solutions, right? And so whether you're using W3 Total Cache, or you're using Super Cache, or Varnish and Memcache, if you're using Cloudflare, there's a ton of solutions that you can use, but none of those solve the problem of when you log in, go to the back end, and say, show me this category of products, and then things start slowing down, right?
Yeah. Post meta just doesn't scale very well for that, and WooCommerce uses a lot of post metadata.
Yeah. So that's where you start navigating through how do you want to adjust it. It's the back end of the management often.
I think that's what happens a lot, and that's where this conversation often gets derailed, because the ecosystem of WordPress and WordPress core, they're not the same thing. They are different, you know what I mean? Like, obviously the core is inside the core. It's like a nucleus. But people use it all in one thing. So when we're saying, can you run a large-scale site on WordPress, I think that in itself is misleading, because it's like, are we talking about, the front end with lots of traffic? Are we talking about large scale, like, major database stuff going on? Like, I think that's where people start to get confused, because you're like, yeah, you can do it with WordPress, but you can't so much do it with WooCommerce because, X, Y, Z. So it's interesting just how those two things become in the public eye, melded together.
That's true of any system.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moving parts, and most customers don't understand all of them. That's why they hire a consultant, an expert in that area. But there are dozens of things to take into consideration when building something to scale up.
You'd be facing the same things if you were using Drupal.
Yep.
You wouldn't be facing the same things if you're using, something like Squarespace or some of those other pre-made options, which are the same thing, because
Squarespace is facing those things.
Yeah.
They have problems with scaling just like everybody else.
Right.
Right. The one difference is if your site goes down with WordPress, you're like, okay, I'm going to move this, I'm going to migrate it, I'm going to copy this stuff over, I'm going to pull down the database. There's things you control. If your site goes down with Squarespace, which they had it went down a while ago, where every single site was down, right? And that's a little bit more that's saddening.
Yeah, they probably got a few phone calls.
That's troublesome on a lot of levels, really.
It is.
Is that a problem when your site is down?
Yeah, maybe sometimes.
When all of the small merchant sites are down, no big deal. Screw them. Go to Target.
I just posted 2 links in the event that we create show notes for people who not that in the event of us creating show notes, in the event that you are a development-oriented person who wants to develop your skills in terms of scaling, and we put these links in the show notes. One is WP Sessions, the website. There's a VIP course there. Zach Tolman did a fantastic 3-hour course on performance optimization for WordPress that is awesome. And then Mark Jakewith just recently announced a new additional solution for caching beyond all the ones I listed before called CacheBuddy, and the link to that one is also there. So there's definitely a group of people that are working on performance as it relates to WordPress, especially for really big scale things.
It's the Viagra team of WordPress. They keep working on keeping it up.
That was
Wow, that just happened.
that was only Say for anyone listening.
The opinions of Say do not with the opinions of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the opinions of Say, these are the opinions of the show, and they're just
Yeah. They don't
heads.
They don't.
But okay, that point aside,
Yeah.
About that though, when you're saying again they're working on scaling sites, are we talking about traffic primarily? Like, you know,
Yeah, so
that's what we're saying when we say large scale. We're not necessarily saying like super massive functionality that, you know, dots this over here and does that over there, but
they can be related.
literally
It's not
traffic.
necessarily exclusive.
yeah, those
I just wanted to define it a little bit, what we're talking about.
Those could be the same, but predominantly when we're talking about scale and growth, we're talking about the performance requirements of high traffic loads, while also having a tremendous amount of content you're trying to put out. So Zach Tolman left Theme Foundry and went to Wired, I think it is, and at Wired, right, they're working on performance optimization of this massive magazine with massive articles plus a ton of ads, and they're doing all of that sitting on top of WordPress, right? So
serious content, like videos and
Yep.
everything, like massive content.
Yep.
So that is an example of both.
Yep.
Even though we're just talking about traffic, it's doing a lot of things. You know, it's having to serve up a lot of different functions for different things, and also being able to track that. Oh, I wonder what they're using to track their ads.
And I know we only have a couple minutes left, but not all traffic is created equally. So I have two very different clients where one has sort of sustained traffic. It's high traffic, but it's sustained, and one has spiky traffic because they get links in from like Drudge Report. So those things have to be considered as well. Is what do you do during a traffic spike?
That's a totally different requirement.
It absolutely is.
That's exciting.
Yeah, your servers can melt down if you have a sudden spike from a Drudge link.
And
So-
most
so
servers
you
will
need
melt
to get
down
off
if you
your
have a
host.
Drudge
Dude.
link.
What you're
Most
saying.
servers will just shut them. Will just shut off if you
Yeah.
get a Drudge link. If you're not prepared for that,
The servers are all, nah, I'm not kidding. I don't want to deal with that.
They're just like that. That's
Yes.
exactly what they're like.
Yeah. Well, if they're
That's
if
how I
they're
explain it. That's how
they
we
will if
explain
they're
it.
Microsoft servers.
Well, okay.
Oh, that was funny.
Was it?
Yeah.
Not very.
Did we lose Jason?
Well, I
I don't
don't know.
know.
Jason is hanging out. He's done with us. He was like, la 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 la. I
no,
can't
he's back.
hear you.
Here's Jason. There he is.
Oh, hey,
just in time to
Jason
find
came
us
back
all.
to close the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, came back to close the show.
we really, really appreciate it, by the way, because we
Are
need
your servers-
we're like a bad
Are
SNL
your
skit
servers
over
not
here.
scaling up well?
And Jason also switched cameras. He's got the close-up camera going.
Yeah, I have the movable camera.
Oh, whoa. Blair Witch Project.
I'm getting dizzy.
So, oh yeah, that was fun, guys.
Final words?
Fun guys.
Fun,
Oh,
guys.
final words or word?
Yeah, final words.
Mushrooms.
All right. Well,
I have
that about
nothing to
this
say to
for
that.
today. Make sure you go to our website, WPwatercooler.com, and click on the links there to subscribe and like us. And also, if you're on YouTube, you can click on the like button there and subscribe. Thank you very much for being on the show, everyone, and talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.